Strap in, Hubranksters. Today's your ultimate VR showdown. You've got a PS5, you're eyeing the PS VR2. Now let's make sure you're prepped with the best games out there. I've cut through the hype to bring you the top 10 PlayStation VR games you simply can't miss. Let's get into it. Pistol Whip is one of the all-time great VR games. A truly intense mix of rhythm game, physical exercise game, and shooting gallery, it gets your blood pumping quickly and makes you feel like a John Wick-like superhero in just a matter of minutes. A neon-infused arcade-style game with several incredible stages, each level in Pistol Whip is an on-rails journey through a different environment where you steadily charge through a gauntlet of gun-toting enemies. With a pistol or two in hand, you need to shoot them before they can shoot you, all while physically ducking, dodging, and weaving the slow-moving bullets they fire. The trick to doing well and truly feeling in the moment, however, is making sure that you shoot accurately and to the beat of the music. And when all the elements come together, it's quite possibly the most satisfying adrenaline-pumping experience in VR. And the soundtrack, full of energizing bangers. Since its initial launch in 2019, the game has added a slew of excellent content, including numerous gameplay modifiers, several new stages, and even a few narrative campaigns. The Western-themed Smoke and Thunder is a personal favorite, which comes complete with 6 shooters and more great music tracks. Pistol Whip is an absolute must-have for PSVR 2. It's one of the games that makes the resurgence of VR feel worthwhile. No Man's Sky is already a wonder of a game, an infinite, procedurally generated galaxy for you to explore and discover. It has seamless planetary exploration and spacefaring with friends or solo. Base building mechs, dogfighting, and countless other features are mind-boggling to think about, with a developer that seems dead set on continuing to expand the game beyond what anyone could feasibly expect. Having jumped in and out of No Man's Sky over its 5-year existence, I've had the best time with it in VR. Because the game has a large focus on resource gathering, menu-based crafting, and long walks, being able to do that with your hands via motion controls makes a lot of the more menial aspects of the game a lot faster and easier to manage. It lets you get to the good stuff, like going anywhere you want in your starfighter, and building your home in the galaxy much more quickly. Something about the majesty of brand new space environments is far more impressive and humbling when you feel like you're actually in it too, despite the game's cartoonish art direction. For every minor rough edge in the VR version of the game, the experience of feeling like you actually exist in an endless galaxy where you can just get up and go absolutely anywhere is certainly something special. And if you have friends who also have VR headsets, No Man's Sky also supports cross-platform multiplayer, making it a wonderful place to simply hang out as you build a second sci-fi life. Horizon, Call of the Mountain may tread familiar paths in the VR landscape with its bow-centric adventures and tactile puzzles, but it elevates the ordinary to extraordinary with finesse and polish. The game merges tried-and-true elements like precision archery, intriguing interactions with your surroundings, and yes, an abundance of climbing, into a seamless and stunning adventure. It may have an overindulgence in vertical ascents, but that's a small note in its symphony of experiences. Within its realm, Horizon doesn't just tick boxes. It crafts a blockbuster VR experience reminiscent of an exhilarating theme park ride. With the likes of Half-Life Alyx reigning supreme on PC, Horizon steps up as the PSVR 2's answer, a visually breathtaking escapade set in a vivid and lush world that showcases the true graphical prowess of the PSVR 2. Horizon, Call of the Mountain is more than just a game for the PSVR 2. It's a journey worth savoring and a vibrant gateway for anyone new to VR. And trust us, you'll want to stop and admire the details right down to the stunningly rendered moss. Some of the most downright pleasant experiences in VR are the ones that don't put you directly in the shoes of another individual, but frame you as the all-seeing, omnipresent force in a world much smaller than yours. Astro Bot Rescue Mission was one of the standouts on the original PSVR. But Moss and Moss Book 2 also followed close behind. If you haven't tried these adorable games, you must. It features the cutest little mouse hero you've ever seen as you help him through fantasy dioramas, fighting enemies and solving environmental puzzles. It's a lightweight and satisfying adventure, made all the more charming by the way Quill, the mouse hero in question, interacts and responds to you. It'll warm your heart. This duo of titles from Enhance have been must-have titles for every VR device they've graced. And the same is true of the PSVR 2. If there's any part of you that's doubting the existence of Tetris Effect on this list, then you clearly have not experienced it in VR. It's a transcendent experience where every move you make, every button you press, and every line you make has a ripple effect into the soundscape, the visual cacophony of its stages, and the haptic feedback you get. It's an incredible, all-encompassing sensory experience that is pure magic. Simple as that. Oh, and Tetris is one of the greatest games of all time. Rez Infinite has long been lauded for very similar reasons. A game originating on the Sega Dreamcast, its timelessness and continued ability to impress today speaks volumes about how astute its ideas were over 20 years ago. An on-rails shoot-'em-up game, it's the closest analog to those far-fetched 1980s ideas about flying through cyberspace that exists in games. When it was updated for modern VR devices, developer Enhance created a new stage, Area X, which is an incredible free-flying level that is viscerally liberating to fly through. It's sublime. Special mention must also be given to the new eye-tracking aiming features added to Rez Infinite for the PSVR2 version of the game. It's a seemingly minor addition, but eye tracking is a complete game-changer for how you interface with Rez. Aim just by looking? I can't recommend it highly enough. If you own previous versions of these games on PS4, you'll need to pay a small fee to upgrade to the PS5 PSVR2 versions, but both are definitely worth it. Eye tracking for Rez aside, the higher definition visuals and enhanced haptic feedback through the DualSense controller and the PSVR2 headset itself are worth the price of entry. Horror games are always trepidatious recommendations as VR games. If you're not a fan of jumping out of your seat while playing a regular video game, you sure aren't going to have a great time in VR. But if you relish horror games, VR horror games can be great, adding an incredible new layer to already excellent experiences like Resident Evil. While Resident Evil 7 was absolutely terrifying in VR, Resident Evil Village dials things back a tad to the more campy roots of the series. It's not as strong of a game overall, but it is still a very entertaining romp, especially with the fidelity afforded by PSVR 2. There are larger-than-life antagonists that are fun to cower under, a bit of psychological horror, a bunch of action, and plenty of moments featuring visceral first-person gore. If you already own Resident Evil Village, great. It's a free upgrade and certainly worthwhile playing through again. But if not, it's worth giving a shot if you think you can stomach it. Horror is one of the things VR does best, after all. The perfect game to follow Resident Evil Village is Kayak, which is simply a beautiful game that revolves around kayaking through absolutely gorgeous natural environments. One of my favorite things about video games is the sense of real-world virtual tourism they offer, and Kayak does this in an exceptional way. The atmosphere is incredible. I'm too much of a chicken to ever go solo kayaking in Antarctica for real, but the fact that I can sit down after a long day to do just that, this is what VR was made for. There's also a competitive component to Kayak for those who want to compete in frantic paddling races. But really, Kayak is simply a great game on hand for when you just want to take yourself somewhere completely different and relax, listening to the gentle ripple of water and staring in awe at how beautiful our planet can be. As evidenced by Kayak, not all good VR experiences need to be intense sensory assaults. Puzzling Places gets a special mention on this list because it's one of the few games that really just lets you relax with VR. It's a calming 3D jigsaw game where puzzles are realistic miniatures of interesting architecture from around the world. Calming ambient soundscapes, a relaxed vibe, and satisfying puzzles with pieces that are fun to manipulate. It's the perfect game to just plop down on a big comfy chair with and reset your mind. It's incredibly chill, simple as that. Smash VRS is a reimagining of the 2001 Sega arcade game Cosmic Smash, with an incredibly slick audio and visual treatment that recalls the heyday of late 90s futurism in the same ways as Rez Infinite. And like Rez Infinite, it's a concept that translates incredibly well to VR. It's enjoyable in short bursts with a highly satisfying sensory experience and an approachable gameplay concept that keeps your body moving, forcing you to be uninhibited. It's the kind of VR game you're happy to put just 30 minutes into, but are still drawn back to the next day, and it's even better if you have room to move. Complete with a solo campaign challenge, a more relaxing Zen mode, and online multiplayer, Smash VRS looks unassuming but is essential. Demeo is a solid multiplayer turn-based tactics game, but its X factor comes from the fact that it replicates the feeling of sitting around with your friends and diving deep into a tabletop game. Only your board is elaborately detailed, your pieces are alive, and you can physically dive deeper into the fantasy world if you so choose, blowing it up so it feels like you're right in there with your character. Filled with a number of Dungeons and Dragons-styled campaigns to work through, it's a nice, chill way to spend some time in VR with friends. The game is also cross-platform compatible with non-VR versions, but the online matchmaking can also be the source of some surprisingly nice interactions too. If you're a fan of tabletop or turn-based tactics, Demeo is worth having for running a quick solo gauntlet or a long campaign with friends.
As I'm back, there will be no Raka. Only me.